love, and he's looking down in love. So careful, little eyes, what you see. Little hands, what you do. Oh, be careful, little mouth, what you say. Oh, be careful, little mouth, what you say. There's a father up above, and he's looking down in love.
What's going on, everyone? Great Talon here, and today the prey is going to be my Outlast 2 review. If you ever wondered what it would truly be like to hide and outrun psychotic killers and or cults, then look no further than Outlast 2, the sequel to the one-hit wonder Outlast from 2014. Originally releasing in 2017, Outlast 2 puts you into the role of investigative journalist seeking to uncover the mysteries of a murder of a pregnant woman within a small mountain town when all of a sudden their vehicle goes down and life begins to snowball into one of the most terrifying experiences I had to date, only being superseded by the likes of Alien Isolation. So join me to discover just how haunting and thrilling Outlast 2 really is. Okay, so graphics, performance, and controls are up first. Outlast 2's visual design may be on the darker side, meaning darker in shadowing wise, but from what I can tell in areas of light or when the character models were up close and personal with the character you're playing as, they did appear to be a bit more polished and detailed from the likes of its predecessor, which was nice to see, and environments such as the chapels, villages, and forest areas in which the game actually takes place in, what it really does is that the shading offsets the shine of your flashlight, say, and or dim moonlight from time to time in order to really emphasize the horror-like trope of a feeling. And I thought that Outlast 2's developers, Red Barrels, did a fine job of showcasing the counterbalance between light and dark well enough to capture the feeling of not only horror, but a sense of isolation and singularity, as most of the time when you're not being hunted down like wild game, you're just mostly listening to the sound of your breath, or your footsteps, or other footsteps, or actually, while trekking out into the lonesome wilderness. Performance-wise, Outlast 2 ran at about 60 frames per second on my PS4 Pro and was pretty consistent for the most part, with no crashes, lag, stutter, or any glitches that I could notice. Controlling and moving the character around in first-person view and perspective can feel a bit stiff at first, but once you get a handle on the controls and figure out that this is not a traditional first-person shooter game, but rather a first-person survival horror experience, then you'll actually, with a different set of controls, then you'll ease in quite nicely, I think, over time. There's a little small learning curve there, but once you get through the first chapter of the game, you should be fine. The game also starts off its first chapter as more of a tutorial section anyway, with hints and prompts popping up how to use the control to navigate around the area, which is actually quite nice of them to do. Okay, next up is the gameplay and a bit about the story. The story of Outlast 2 takes place in a small mountain-like town on the outskirts within the state of Arizona, as you, the player, Blake, and his wife and partner in investigative journalism, Lynn, are scoping out the town trying to get a better idea of the mysterious murder and disappearance of a pregnant woman, when their helicopter goes down and crashes into the forest, and then Blake and Lynn are separated, and in the end, without spoiling too much, Lynn gets kidnapped, and it's up to Blake to get his wife back. But it's not all that simple as it sounds, as along the way, Blake will discover some seriously dark and evil disturbing things and secrets about the cult that kidnapped his wife. And without ruining it, just know that the game takes inspiration from such horror movies, classics of the past, such as like Rosemary's Baby and a few others. And I'll just leave it at that. Also, in addition to, you experience really cool numerous flashbacks in a schoolyard-like setting, which just adds to like the terror and the horror-like atmosphere. In regards to the gameplay mechanics, you actually play in a first-person perspective, right? And are armed with only a camcorder, a flashlight, and recording capabilities, and the ability to hide in closets, under beds, and in barrels full of liquidy goo-like substance, and even hold your breath underwater for seemingly an infinite amount of time. This is not a game about offense, so if you're looking for the next Doom, Fear, or Resident Evil, where once you obtain the infamous shotgun, the game becomes an action junkie game. No, this is a title about surviving as the night is long and dark and full of terrors. And it is up to you to figure out your best means of survival, which most of the time means simply outrunning the enemy and get to the next safe haven area. I found that unlike Outlast 1, where I was hiding was a big part of the game in Outlast 1. I only found myself hiding a handful of times throughout the game in Outlast 2, which is fine, but it does take a bit away from the tension in a sense. When I can sprint and run to the next available area and unlock, the mechanism and run back to the previous area and just unlock the path forward, sure, it adds a thrilling sense of feeling for sure, but it's a give and take, I felt. Even where in Outlast 2 it sacrifices tension for thrill rides, which is fine in a sense and happens to work and creates more scenarios of action, sequences, as opposed to hiding in an old wooden linen closet from the 1800s getting eaten alive by moths. Blake also has the ability to capture events on his camera and record them as evidence or for documenting purposes to look at and observe later on in your journal. If you're ever discovered and or hit by an enemy and you take damage, you can heal yourself with bandages you found scattered throughout the map. And if your flashlight ever gets low on battery from using the night vision mode to see in pitch black areas, which are quite frequent in the game, you can find batteries scattered about to keep on your person cosmetically. And you can check on how many bandages and your inventory and batteries, how much you have, by hitting the touchpad on the PS4 or the back or options menu on the Nintendo Switch and Xbox One. There's about 4 difficulty settings too, with the easiest being story difficulty for those who just want to experience the story like I was. No shame here. I played on story mode. I really didn't care. I wanted to just experience the story. And also the hardest difficulty, I think, called Insanity, which in the description says, and I quote, "Real life simulator. You will not survive." To give you an idea of just how difficult that setting is.
Okay, we're good.
2 weeks ago, a young woman was found wandering, barefoot, pregnant, and alone on a barren stretch of highway 100 miles from the nearest...
Oh! We lost the engine! Fuck! Fuck! Oh, Jesus! I feel the engine going down! Mayday! Now the feet! Lynn, where are we going?
Away from here. Anywhere but here.
From the outside world, Mark Wish has a foul person we've been awaiting all this time. He has a tie in her belly. What? I performed examination myself. The earth is told creatures.
In regards to the sound, music, and voice acting, right off the bat, let's get music out of the way first. Considering there is very subtleties with the music, there is a soundtrack. It's very, very eerie. It's very low key. It's very melodramatic. It's a lot of violin, and it's a lot of like very, very ambient sounds, and I love it. And there's also dramatic sounds when you're discovered, or like thumping sound effects, and when they're in your face, there's like those jump scares and everything. Not too many jump scares, but there is a lot of thrilling sections where the sound just really takes over. And sound is really important. Whether you're running for your life or just hiding and stuff like that. The sound effects, however, are also superb. Very intentional when, like I said, they're being subtle or deliberate. The sound mixing here, whether it be from something as simple as stepping on twigs in the forest, or using the microphone on your camera to listen to heavy breathing or detect when enemy is present or near. The audio effects in Outlast 2 are quite remarkable, and they should be, as if you wish to succeed in achieving a good horror experience, sound is key. The voice acting is really intense as well, as both voice actors portraying Blake and Lynn really seem to give it their all when in character, and as well as the bone chillingness that comes from whenever one of the cult members or their leader speaks in their cryptic, demented-like tone. Now on to replay value. I'm going to go with moderate here because while some of you out there may get off on outrunning dozens of people who want to see nothing more than your head on a spike or to be strung up on an upside down cross naked with your privates flapping about against your belly, once I reached the story's conclusion, I was more than satisfied in the most fucked up way possible, that is. I felt like I really witnessed most of the interesting conclusion to what was one of the most darker and more psychotic narrative I've experienced in a horror game in years, and I love loved every second of it. But with that being said, besides experiencing the game on a higher, more realistic difficulty setting and collecting all the recordings and notes, there's really not much to go back for other than to experience the whole horror of a tale all over again. This is a heavily focused, story-driven game to begin with, and it does deliver that on that tenfold. And now on to the overall score, and is it worth your time? I'm going to go with an 8 out of 10 here. If you're looking for a sincerely messed up and survival horror experience and aren't one that minds being able to fight back against most of the time and where the best offense is a strong defense mentality, then you'll be right at home here. The only cons I can really find is, I thought it was less bit intense than the first Outlast, which focused more on hiding and creeping, like I said. Whereas Outlast 2 is more so heavily suggesting outmaneuvering your enemies and running every chance you get. Should be called Outrun, not Outlast. Honestly, but even if you're a newcomer to the horror genre, the story mode difficulty provides enough ease of access for you to get your feet wet and make it to the end, in which I can safely say if you can tolerate horror games and you don't have a weak stomach with only a handful of jump scares here and there, with an eerie-like atmosphere, then Outlast 2 might just be for you. But if you're one who needs to know it's survival horror game genre with action like Resident Evil, you might not actually fare well here, and it may turn you off a little bit. So anyway, with that being said, that's my review of Outlast 2. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Don't forget to drop a like and a sub and a comment, and I will catch you guys on the next one. Thanks as always for stopping by.